はい、カタカナのパート5を一緒に勉強しましょう。ラリルレロワンです。はい。In the background, you have Super Nintendo World. So if we just read through this Super... お、ごめんなさい。はい。はい。Super Nintendo World Universal Studio Japan in Osaka. So this is Super Nintendo World, a part of Universal Studios Japan in Osaka. はい。では、ラ、カタカナのラです。ラリルレロのラ。はい。So, same beginning as with te. We have a little horizontal line and then a longer horizontal line, but I just connect this as if it were fu. Right? So it's like fu kind of squished down in order to make room for a line on top. The line is slightly shorter. いいですか? Then the second one. So the second one is the slightly longer of the two. 1、2と書いてラ。カタカナのラです。1、2、ラ。次はリ。リ。So, with hiragana ri, I'll put just hiragana versus katakana over here. So, hiragana was curved with a hook and then curved again back inside. With katakana, you have no hook, straight down, and then straight down at first and then off to the left. Kind of fading out to the left. いいですか? So, 1、2、1、2、1、2 is our katakana ri. Katakana ri. はい。いいですか? This happens to be, by the way, why many computer fonts still write the hiragana ri as almost like one stroke, because they're exaggerating that difference in order to make it clear whether it's hiragana ri or katakana ri. はい。でも、カタカナのリがこれです。はい。では次。ル。ル。カタカナのの。Again, like I said, we're going to use katakana no no. We're going to say that quite a lot for these kind of lines that curve off down to the left. And then this, we have our vertical line and back up. 1、2、1、2。ごめんなさい. That's not particularly great at the end here. 1、2。Careful to write these together as one character. Right? We want to make sure that this is a set and not just the sequence of two different katakana, because that would mean something different. We're actually going to see that on the very next slide. はい。る. Whereas our next one here is れ. れ. So, 1、1. Just kind of pull up. So this kind of 90-degree here, we come to a full stop and up. 1. And that's re. So again, for ru, we don't want it to look like no re. This is a single character for ru, and then re. This is easier to see too in vertical writing, where we can see that, for example, ru is separated around like the middle of the character, whereas de starts at a little bit of the left edge of this box. Right. De. はい。では、ラリルレ、次はロ。ロ. Now obviously this we will also talk about quite often as a part of different kanji. It's just a box essentially. So the box, and in general characters that we write in Japanese, we write the left edge and then go left to right and then left to right again. 1、2、3. If this comes slightly out at the end, that's okay. It's just kind of considered part of, you're going into the momentum of the character. But this is perfectly fine as well. はい。では、すみません。1、2、3. Slightly inwards is okay. Outwards is not, though. It is not some sort of random trapezoid. いいですか? それでダメです。はい。では、ラリルレロ。次は、わ。わ。So we have 1、2, vertical line for about half the character, and then essentially katakana no fu is what we're writing here. 1、2、1、2. So just like u, except without the top dot. いいですか? それがわ。 wa. And 最後 So here we have our mostly horizontal line, and then this left to right line that kind of comes up and goes basically to meet it. いいですか? 1, 2. So we start at the same place, and then we end just about here. いいですか? 1, 2, 1, 2. がんです。はい。And that is our last base katakana. では let's take a look back at some very commonly confused katakana. So, sa and se, they don't look particularly similar to each other, but I think that people get confused with like this horizontal line here, and then there's other stuff, and so somehow people kind of get this idea that, oh yeah, and then I think there's also this confusion in the background about like, oh, a sa is S-A, and then people are still thinking about this as S-A, like say. But remember, this has nothing to do with English spelling or English letter names. So these two are just sa, and always sa, and these are se, se. They come from a different place. This one, the katakana sa comes from here, whereas both of these characters come from this kanji. But they don't look particularly similar, but again, they're just really commonly confused, so good to go over in your mind. We have a third, a third, a third. The sa was the character that we can kind of divide into threes in both ways. And then hiragana se and katakana se. いいですか? はい. So that's the first one. The next one is u, wa, and ku. U, wa, and ku. So of course with u and wa we see the difference is whether the line is at the top or not. So here's u versus wa. Wa. Of course we could also talk about fu, which is just without this line entirely. That would be fu. But notice how this line is vertical, essentially vertical, or even slightly inwards into the character, coming slightly down to the right. And it goes for about half of the vertical distance. Whereas this one, with ku, well, first of all, the whole character is skinnier. The whole character is skinnier, and then this first line is parallel to the curve. So these two curves are parallel to each other. So 1, 2 is ku. いいですか? それがku. Now, this difference is important because actually the word waku waku, waku waku, is the word for excited, or it's the sound word for being excited in Japanese. So you can see this person is saying waku waku, waku waku. And it will look very similar if we're not really key in on, okay, is this line coming down straight or is it going off to the left? Like this. We can sort of see that this ku is a little bit shorter as well, or a little bit skinnier, but the biggest difference is that first line. That will help us well. Doraemon here in the distance is saying, mo tanoshimi de waku waku shiten no boku. So he's looking forward to it and really excited about it. So waku waku. Here you see it in a slightly different font as well. Hai. But the mother of all sort of confusable katakana is this set. Here we have Spider-Man with shi, no, so, and tsu. So let's take a look at the differences between these in a little bit more detail. We saw this earlier as well, but just as a sort of review. So first of all, there are a few differences. There are three main differences. First, the edge that the strokes line up on. So for shi and the strokes line up on the left-hand side like this, right? Whereas for tsu and so, the strokes do not line up on the left-hand edge. Rather, they line up on the top, like this. Right? So they line up like this. That's our first one. Whereas before you could see, oh, there's this like kind of space here, right? So they don't line up over on this side. They line up on top. So that's the first difference between shi, and then tsu, so. The second one, the dot stroke direction. So for shi and the dot strokes are nearly horizontal, whereas for tsu and so, the dot strokes are nearly vertical. So just there, we can actually tell the difference. So if we only look at the first two strokes, if I only write this, we can already tell that I'm going to write shi. if I'm only writing this, I can already tell that I'm going to write tsu. Right? This is sufficient information to know which of the two strokes that I'm going to write. And then the third one, of course, is that the long stroke direction. So shi and n from the bottom upwards, versus tsu and so I'm essentially writing katakana no. So from the top and curve down to the bottom. いいですか? So there are our commonly confused katakana. Feel free to watch this or go back to it as many times as you need. It's not going to come to you instantly just the first time because you understood it when you were watching a video. Like, it's a very common phenomenon where, oh yeah, I understood this, and then you go away 5 minutes later and you're like, what was that? I totally forgotten. That's okay. Go back and re-remember it enough times because we will be using all of these quite a bit for the rest of the semester. 頑張りましょう.